I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior vs. Zombie, and as always, I have an amazing warrior to share with you today, Arlen Denney. Come back to him in a second, but first, let me remind you of why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world, and in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. Warriors all have a cause, unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future, and today's guest is absolutely no exception. Arlen Denney is an awesome warrior. He's a husband, a father, an Air Force veteran. His warrior journey began in Utah and led to 33 years as an airman, reaching the rank of lieutenant colonel while serving all over the world in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and probably many other places as well. As a consummate warrior, he is a successful business owner, sales professional, consultant, traveler, and poet. His first book of poetry is expected to be published this year, which is a series of poems and short stories to celebrate the lives of those God has brought into his life. His ideal day includes time, both in person and virtually, and we'll understand that in a minute, with his wife of 38 years and 6 children, as well as time outdoors, hiking, fishing, and golf. And I like that one. I'm going to get back into that more. I've been, after getting a hip replaced. So anyway, Arlen Denney, welcome to Warrior vs. Zombie. So tell us, where the heck are you right now?
David, thank you so much. I appreciate being on your podcast today. You've been a rock star for so long. I've always admired your work. But I'm dialing in today from Bahrain. I'm currently on a military contract here in the Middle East, and I've had the opportunity to do this multiple times. So this is not new for the family. This is a new country for me, but the work that we do is about the same no matter where we go. We support the warfighter, and we help them accomplish the missions that they have in hand. So I'm just kind of a special technical advisor for them right now. And today's Friday, so I actually had a chance to go to church, and I went to work, and I had a little nap, and now I'm ready to chat with you about how warriors and zombies clash in so many different ways.
So tell me a little bit about Bahrain. I know it's in the Middle East, but I'm assuming because of that, is it a desert type of environment? Is that what we're talking about? Like in Qatar, where my son-in-law was and stuff? Is that what?
It's actually just a little thumbnail island. It's not too large, but it's right next to Saudi Arabia, and it's actually north of Qatar. And you got Iran is across the Persian Gulf. So it's very modern. It's got a lot of great skyscrapers and business, and has a great diversity of population here. But yeah, it's an incredible opportunity to experience culture and in different nationalities and food of all different kinds.
Fascinating. And so being LDS, I guess, is the best way to say it. You said you went to church. Is that not a predominantly Muslim area that you're in there? Is this an expat church, or is this, what's that look like?
Yeah, it is an expat church, but you'd be surprised how many LDS people from around the world actually work and live here in Bahrain. Majority of the LDS members here are probably Filipino. There's several here that are military. One of my good friends, Billy, is from Nigeria, and I look forward to seeing him every week. But again, having church on Fridays, which is their weekend and their holiday, just kind of always confuses me. What do I do when Sunday rolls around? I go back into work. So our work week, Sunday through Thursday, and you just roll with it the way it goes. But it's always great to meet with the members, no matter where they are.
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's kind of funny because this Sunday is here in the States is Mother's Day. And so with 5 kids and 6 grandkids and all the things going on, you've got 6, so you got me beat there. But one of the things that you have to learn when you have multiple interests in any kind of family get together or any kind of thing, or whether it's getting together as a church, you pick a day, right? And you go with it, because otherwise you never do anything, because everybody's got stuff. So doing it on a Friday, if the Friday is the first day of the week, if you will, for starting your week off, then so be it, right? Some religions worship on Saturday, some have daily prayer, whatever it might be. So yeah, I get all that, and it's not worth focusing on, honestly. It's really just the main thing to focus on as we go as warriors is we need a connection to a higher power, whatever that sounds like, looks like, however you label that, it doesn't matter to me. The point is we got to be doing something bigger than ourselves. So, well, let's do this. I want to get into your story, because you have a very, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you here, aside from my affinity to the U.S. Air Force and veterans and all that, and your journey, I want to hear how you got from where you started, and you get to define where that is, but I want to hear the zombies you've overcome and then how you got to where you are today. So let's take a quick break. For the audio audience, we'll hear a little bit of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Arlen Denney and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see.
All right, we are back. Arlen, I'm excited to talk to you and learn a little bit about Bahrain and where you're at today. And I know it's about 7 hours later there, so you're into your Friday evening, I guess. So tell me, how did you get from where you started to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks for that, David. And my journey, obviously, I always call myself the accidental careerist, because I had no earthly clue I was going to dedicate my entire life to the military. I knew that as a young enlisted airman at the Utah Air National Guard, I wanted to get in and have some help with my college. I felt patriotic duty, obviously, to serve the country. And I got in there as a crew chief on the KC-135s. Loved the aircraft even still today. It's one of my favorites. But I had the inspiration to actually get commissioned and maybe go to the pilot training route. And as I worked myself through, I realized my age might be an issue. And so I actually got my degree in 3 years. I tested out of a full year of college with the help of an Army education officer, suggested some routes to expedite my career or expedite my degree. And as I was setting up for that, the selection process is very demanding. You have to take qualifying tests. You have to interview with the selection committee. Every year I interviewed, the rules seemed to change. And what applied one year didn't apply the next. And it really frustrated me for about 4 years. I put in for all these different opportunities, but then one day I finally made it. There were 5 of us that were selected for 2 pilot training slots. And I just had to pass an eye-hand coordination test. We were going to all fly down to Texas. While I was sitting on the top row of a bleacher waiting to play a softball game, a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, 4 foot by 8 foot, flew about 60 feet to clock me on the top row of the bleacher. And fortunately, I was turned sideways, so it broke my forearm straight across both bones. Was a compound. Missed my elbow, missed my back. We'd only sat down for 2 minutes. So that board had my name all over it.
Wow.
And because of that board, and I looked down and my arm just stung. It, like I said, it felt like somebody dropped a bat across it. But 2 plates eliminated me from pilot training. They said you can't fly with internal fixation devices. So I was beside myself. But then I realized that was probably the good Lord telling me, Arlen, I do not want you to be a pilot. There's too many other ways that I can take care of you and provide for you. You have to trust me on this, and I'm going to work with you and for you. So after I realized that couldn't be there, my full focus was how do I support the air crews? I wanted to be part of the air crew. How do I support them now? And as time advanced, I thought, let me switch over to intelligence. They do the crew briefs, and they fly around with the crew. They're required asset, and I love research. I love talking to folks and kind of helping them help themselves. So went off to Intel school, enjoyed that, and then just kind of waited. I mean, I was prepared to do whatever was required. And then when 9/11 happened, guess who they were screaming for? We need Intel everywhere. They didn't say we needed 5,000 new pilots. We need Intel to step up and come around and help us with homeland defense and all these other things. So at that point, I was 20 years into a military career, really hadn't done much. So I was working for a dental implant company. I called them up and said, hey, don't hold my position for me. I'm going to go do this Intel. And 15 years later, I had volunteered for so many different things that actually allowed me to retire early. Most Guard and Reserve guys retire at 60. I was able to retire at 54. And looking back on that full 33-year career, there were so many little times I figured I was going to take a path and it was blocked that I had to flex a little bit. So somebody said, dude, you should be the subject of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Because your cheese got moved a lot. And you were just constantly flexing and, looking for the best ways forward and applying to positions that either weren't even advertised or were just completely foreign to what I trained in. So eventually ended up into the unmanned systems, and that today is why I'm here, because of my experience with the unmanned systems, and then working at that AFRICOM headquarters at Stuttgart is my last military thing. And it was just one of those things I could have not scripted my life any better than the good Lord did. So that's why I say I'm accidental careers, because again, I just couldn't have scripted it any better, and he always took great care of me.
Well, he always will take great care of you. I happen to be a Christian as well, and I understand that, as I say, we make our plans. A lot of people are very thorough about making plans. Then God laughs and says, okay, but this is what you're going to do. Right. Yeah. So, and the interesting thing is accidental careerist is kind of a fascinating concept when I connect the dots with that and my history, because I retired from the corporate world 17 years ago, actually almost 18 this year. And the key there was that I kept asking, okay, what am I supposed to do? I'm retired. 4 of my 5 kids are still at home. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what to do. And I kept asking and asking and asking. And finally he said, shut up. There's a verse that says, be still, know that I'm God. That's there. And he said, shut up. In my mind, he said, shut up and answer the phone. In other words, I'm going to bring the opportunity. So I run my life by what I call divine appointment these days, have done so now for 17 plus years. And I think that's the best way to go. I mean, I would tell people all the time, don't get in your head, be anxious. It's one thing to have goals. It's good to have goals. It's good to know where you're going. I'm known as a vision warrior because I'm always getting people focused on why are you on the planet? What's the unique value you provide? And if anything were possible, what kind of impact you want to have, and what's your ideal day look like? If you can answer those questions, you should be inspired. I don't need to motivate you at that point. You just need to be inspired. So I find that fascinating that you play the ball. It's kind of like golf. You said you were a golfer, right? So you play the ball where it lies, right? If you move the ball, it's cheating. So you got to play the ball where it is. And sometimes it lands in the rough. Sometimes there's a tree between you and the green, right? There's all kinds of challenges, but that's what life is about, challenge and support. So the military thing, I kind of get that. You had a goal. I still, that plywood hitting you out of, that's kind of a fascinating story. So what else? What other kinds of things have influenced you as you have gotten today? What other zombies have you encountered along the path?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, a lot of it is just basic integrity. When you look up to leaders, and if they would have come to me and say, "Hey, Arlen, we don't think you're ever going to be a pilot with us. We think you should pick a different path," instead of just saying, "Well, if you do this next time," or whatever else. They didn't even really give me some positive interaction or positive reinforcement. I could have handled the truth a little bit better, but when I caught them in lies, it just kind of broke my heart that here you are supposed to be a key leader for the squadron and stuff like that. And so, anytime you come up with people's ulterior motives, it's frustrating. It would be nice if somebody could just sit you down and say, "You're a great kid." I actually had one of my mentors that sat me down after all this, and he said, "Arlen, if you pursue everything else in life with the same tenacity that you did this, there is no way you are going to fail. Just keep your eye on what you need and want to do. Go after everything." He gave me some advice. He said, "Look into information, look into space. Those are the emerging areas." And I ended up basically doing both with the final career things that I did. And I'm always grateful for that one particular mentor. I always lived my life with the curiosity of what comes next. And when the student's ready, the mentor appears. And I'm just a dry sponge. Whenever I can have somebody distill their wisdom on me, I soak it all in. I really love that concept. And the fact that there's an abundance. We are creators. And so whenever I was feeling down or, depressed, I would just pause, like you said, be still, think, ponder, pray, see what comes next. Personal revelation has always been extremely valuable to me. And then pursuing the paths that those who are brought into my life can actually work. So the networking side of life and the connectors that you make are pivotal to the things that I've done in life. I've never charted the place in myself. I followed people who were on the paths that I wanted to go, and that was very helpful.
Well, there's a lot of warrior lessons there. There's a lot of things there that people can take away here. And one of them is that, it's not what happens outside you, it's what happens inside you. And unfortunately, in today's world especially, and I know you're dealing with this as we all are, is there's very little outside you today, especially when it comes to media, when it comes to government, when it comes to even corporate bureaucracies and corporate interests that we can trust, right? It's the integrity, the tell it like it is. Constantly, warriors are facing what I call gaslighting. They're facing people telling you, well, forget about what you see, forget about what your source, just listen to me, I've got you. And then giving up and not going forward with your own intention as a warrior, because that's what warriors do. That's an easy zombie to get inserted into our lives. And I see warriors all the time that are sitting, waiting for somebody to give them permission or to hear the truth that they know is there from somebody. And it's great that we all have mentors. We all need mentors, right? If you're a coach, if you're an author, if you're anything, you need people in your life that are going to help you along the path. But you got to have some discernment around that, right? You got to understand that not everybody that's brought into your life is serving you or is helping you along your journey. And that's kind of what you've told us here in your stories. You recognize that untruth and things that weren't serving you, and you were able to make that discernment. So any other things that you've had to overcome along this road, Arlen, that you can think of?
Well, again, raising children and trying to have a stay-at-home mom because her job is the hardest in the world. And I always told her, I said, if I have to work 3 jobs to keep you in the home so that you can manage that chaotic schedule and do whatever and still have fulfillment of your own, then that's what I'll do. So I constantly looked at that. But, I always too, some of the sayings that just go around in your life stick into your heart and your mind. And the one that says, don't tell me what I can't do until after I've done it. And when people say, oh, I didn't think that was possible, but you just did that. Mm-hmm. That was something that, helped me lead my charge. And whatever else I wanted to do is Now, don't tell me what I can't do. If somebody gives me an option, would you like this or that? I want both. There were so many times I could just change things up, but I always wanted to be that the guy that makes things better for the people coming behind me. I brought a lot of people into the Guard, but I ran my own floor covering business. My dad, bless his heart, raised 4 boys that taught us all how to do construction and floor covering. So we were never unemployed. Sometimes we were underemployed, but we always had that skill set we could go back to. So totally grateful for him and his example. And I just, learning teamwork, the sports and stuff that we did. Sometimes you didn't get to play the position you wanted, but, you still got in and played the game. But occasionally, too, you were found to be a versatility player. If dad being the coach, somebody didn't show up, he goes, okay, you're playing shortstop today, or you're playing center field, or you're going to catch, or you're going to pitch. It was nice to have those kind of options. So, just thinking that there's always one straight path forward is never the case. I always like to think of my options and my opportunities are a spiral staircase taking me higher one step at a time. The view gets bigger and bigger and better as I step up and rotate around, but it still gives me that bird's eye view from where I'm at, of where I've covered, and yet the ground that I can still head forward to now.
Well, that's fascinating. And again, I think that speaks a lot to how you've navigated through the journey that you've been on. Is one of the things is who moved my cheese? You mentioned that earlier. And actually in the world that I came out of, which was large scale, multi-billion-dollar outsourcing engagements, moving large groups of people from one company to another, from one business process to another, from one technology to another. Moving the Cheese was one of our favorite books to recommend to people who had just been moved, if you will, outsourced to our company, right? Is okay.
Sure.
Now, let's not forget, we all have a job to do. We all had a goal, we had a vision, we had a purpose that we were here for. Now, things around us changed, the cheese moved, but we still got to eat. So I think that's a fascinating book for people who haven't heard that. So I love that you pulled that one out. That's a good one. Well, let's do this. We've made, there may be more to your story. We can always bring that in, but I really want to get into the next segment. I want to hear about what you're doing today, why you're doing it, the unique value that you see yourself bringing to the table, and then the impact. So let's take a quick break, hear a little more of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back to hear about Arlen and what he's doing today with Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games.
All right, Arlen, we are back. And wow, it's one of the things when you've got as much story as we have and there's so much diversity, sometimes the biggest challenge is figuring out what's things to share and what things not. And fascinating discussion there. And I'm sure there's so much more. And I can't wait. I know we're on this journey through Be Connected to get to know each other. And I can see that there's a lot of possibilities going forward there. So tell me, why are you doing what you're doing today? What are you doing and why are you doing it?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I do want to say too, though, that for all the people who played a role in my life prior to that, the stumbling blocks, I've always wanted to sit down and actually thank them. I don't hold any animosity towards them or their circumstance or the situation they had, because again, it helped me come to where I am, and it helped me recognize the opportunities that were before me as just what they truly were. And I want to just make that note here. But what I've been doing recently, David, is it's been interesting that with all the diverse jobs I've taken, all the networking opportunities I've looked at, I never thought I'd find myself with two CEOs of two incredible tech companies, Be Connected and No Card, calling me, asking me for my opinion, bringing me into the C-suites, basically as a special advisor, get my perspective and appreciating the extra work that I'm putting in for their platforms. Currently working, these are side hustles that I obviously enjoy because it brings me into contact with people like you. And I've always been, I guess, what you call a serial entrepreneur. I work with something and make sure that it gives me the training expertise that I need and want. And, I've never really been in it for the money. I think I've been in it for the experiences it brings me. But back to some of the original stuff that I've done and I've been working on, and why I'm excited about the book is that over the past since I got here a little while ago, I've had such moments of clarity. I've never really felt that my purpose was known. I love to write poetry for other people as if I'm them. I interview people one-on-one. Multiple times I've interviewed people just before they passed on. They were terminal. And the couple of experiences that I had with that, we can share in a bit. But, so I've been writing for years. And I realized that the stories that I have that go with these poems and the opportunities to be in such proximity of people who are willing to share gave me that opportunity to write. And I thought it would be a great way to honor the people that have blessed my life is to share their poem and to share their story. And then when people might read the poem, they might have a few lines that resonate with them, but I really want them to know the person that I wrote it for or about. And many times, as a writer, there are things that come to my heart and my mind in the early waking hours of the day when nothing else is on my mind. And I've always felt obligated to write whatever I was prompted. A lot of times I just post stuff on Facebook. That's my main social media. And people will say, man, that was just for me today. And so in my book, when I've had pieces that weren't interviews, I'm going to credit that to Angel 1 or Angel 2 or Angel 3, whoever and however that source came to me. I want to acknowledge that came from somewhere. It wasn't just me stewing on words and how can I write stuff today. But I know that it's time. I put together the preface of this book in probably 2006, People in Poetry. And again, I wrote a note that says, hey, for all the people that have ever influenced me and brought me the opportunity to write for you, this is your book. And I was going to have people in book or people in poetry and then have a line there that says, put your name here, because if you know me, you've influenced the way I write and the way I live and the way I work. So I'm just excited that I've actually come across a couple publishers, a couple other authors who had just said, Arlen, I love the concept of your book. You need to get it done. And a few of the Facebook people are always saying, when's the book coming? When's the book coming? I finally said, you know what, this is going to be the year because the year ends last day of this year. I love numbers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 12, 31, 23. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That perfect year to say that's when I wrote the book.
I love it. And all I can say is that's fascinating. There's a lot of alignment, honestly, with what you're inspired to do today with your poetry and what I do with this podcast, because it was really the same thing. You're featuring other people's stories in the form of poetry. I'm featuring other people's stories in the form of a podcast, and you're featuring other people's dreams or vision in the form of maybe poetry, and I'm featuring them in the form of podcasts. And how you began doing that is not unlike how this podcast came about, because I started a book back in 2006, interestingly enough, and I still haven't written it yet because it was titled Warrior versus Zombie, or the working title, Warrior versus Zombie, Survive and Thrive in the Zombie Apocalypse. That was before COVID, right? And so now with what we're going through and what we've navigated through and all the cheese that got moved in that process, it created a whole lot more stories. So, and this podcast actually becomes a transcript of a lot of stories. So when the book is finally published, it's going to have a lot of the warriors in there. It might even have you. It probably will in some forms. So,
Yeah, sure.
and since you've gone public with this, by the way, there's no like, okay, I have to get your permission, because we've already put it out there in the public domain. So your story is already out there and will be after this. So anyway, so tell me, as you look at it, you've been, obviously, you gave me one of the unique values is God has brought a lot of powerful people, a lot of influential people, a lot of people that have made a difference in your life. And you obviously have a gift of writing, poetry, that kind of thing. So what kind of impact are you hoping to have, Arlen? What is your, if anything were possible, and as I always say, by the way, everything is possible. That's what the book that I read says.
Sure.
What would you want to accomplish?
Yeah, no, such a great question too. And I should say that a lot of my poetry was actually my journal. So if you see a poem and it will say my name and a date, it basically says, here's what I observed today. I want people to know that I've seen them. I've heard them. I may not have even spoken to them, but I witnessed what they did, and I captured that in my daily journal poem. It doesn't happen every day, but again, when I write, I do that. But I would really love to know that people know that so many people are actually on their side, both seen and unseen, and that there are powers around them that are more powerful than they can ever imagine to create the life that they want. And through the pieces that I write, I always love to emphasize that we're spiritual people having an earthly experience, and that the perspective that I bring tries to make them know just how special they are before and after this earth life that they're experiencing. So my whole point, though, in writing and talking to folks is that if you were to die today, other than a few photographs and memories, what would you have actually written about you that you were passionate about in life? Most people love their families, although some people are born into really crazy situations, and that's a zombie in and of itself from early on in their life. So I can't pretend that every family is a perfect structure for getting started in life. But I love to interview people and draw out from them what they really want to leave behind. My dad passed away. I don't know that there's ever a letter. I don't think he ever touched a computer. He hadn't really said what was important to him. We had a little coffee. He was having his coffee. I was at the kitchen table. We were talking about a few things, just him and me after I retired. He shared with me some of his heartfelt thoughts, that he had never expressed to anyone else. And I just appreciated that he confided in me really what made sense. But I witnessed a lot of stuff that he did, his actions when he saw that the waitress needed a new refrigerator, couldn't afford it. He found a used one, went and swapped it out. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just did what he knew he needed to do. So capturing things like that, what I really want people to have documented for their posterity, even if it's just one letter saying, I was here, here's what I loved, here's what I observed, here's maybe what I could have done different or would have done different, but, make it an insert into the family Bible. So I want people to think about writing a legacy letter or some kind of document. We can upload them into the web. There's so many different things we can do, like with family search and stuff like that. But the ideal day for me is actually sitting there, interviewing somebody, letting them express their heartfelt emotions about family, life, God, their existence, and then getting their permission to read their words back to them. Because a lot of times they don't hear themselves speak. And if they hear my stuff, they go, oh, yeah, you used my words against me, or no, you used my words for me. That's great, and this is super, super good. So I know I've hit the mark when somebody said, I can't stop crying, or, you just nailed that. You listen, the words that came were so healing to me. And that's kind of why I like to do this too, is because it does leave us both better people. The opportunities to meet somebody. I had one mom last minute sit by me on the plane. And she was telling me, she was an Air Force veteran as well, just sharing a few things. I think we talked for the entire flight, probably annoyed everybody around us. But I realized it was important for her to tell me what she was going through, and a good friend of hers who had lost her husband in the war. And she told me about the boys and everything else. And I just thought later, I got her information. I said, I really need to write a piece for the husband or for the boys and the wife. So I wrote a piece, found some pictures, and sent it to him. And just for me, being able to connect with people with unexpected gifts, like this just showed up in the email. Here's a gift for you. Hopefully it will help heal or, bring you some peace. And without those kind of promptings and inspiration, I don't know where my life would be. I think I would be a much more shallow of a man. But I do love the book too, The Art of Possibility. And there's so many things that we can do if we just give ourselves permission to go do them. To be able to walk up to somebody and say, I know you're punching out. What do you want us to say or think about you? And I'm willing to help write them. It's been a total blessing. I don't think in my early ages I would have done, even though I was, always that door-to-door kid knocking on the door saying, hey, do you want to buy some Christmas cards to support the Boy Scouts? Anyway, it's that's kind of been where I'm at, and I love the opportunity now that I don't have to worry about the income. Things are set up pretty well that way. And I can just really, like you, David, devote my time to help people help themselves through our unique art form, yours and mine. And just it brings a dimension to my life and that I would have never expected. But I can see how I was trained up in the Lord's ways and just to be able to see people and hear them.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so many parallels, so many things along the journey when you hear people's stories. For one thing is we all have a story, right? We all have a vision. And it's really a shame if we die with that still in us without ever getting it out, whether it's in the form of a poem, whether it's telling it to your children, whether it's writing a book, whether it's making a movie, it doesn't matter. It's however you choose to express it, but all of us want to have an impact generations into the future. And those poems, this podcast, these episodes, these little snippets can live beyond, and the impact can live beyond this time that we're sharing today. So I just love that. Well, let's do this. We got to get into it. We got to go to the land, what I call the land the plane segment. You can tell I've got 4 million miles on airlines. So everything is a plane metaphor a lot of times in my life. But let's take a quick break. Here, the next to last snippet of our theme song. It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright before the outro. And we'll come into the land the plane segment with Arlen Denney and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God, down the road we go.
Well, Arlen, I know we're just scratching the surface. I always know that because I know there's so much more that I always want to hear, want to say, want to do when I do one of these podcast episodes. So that's why I actually I'm launching another podcast called Triggered by Warrior versus Zombie. And for those warriors that I really feel that they've hit a nerve or they've got something that I really want to go deeper into, whether it's subject matter or whatever, we're going to have special episodes on that podcast. We'll be launching that. So, but as I said before we took the break, if we take away anything from this podcast, in this Land the Plane segment, what would you want us to make sure that we take away?
Yeah, well, I do realize that not everybody is practiced with writing. Again, think of it as a letter to your dearest friend and just start with a letter and just say, here I am. Here's where I was born. Here's my parents. Here's my family. Here's what I did. Here's where I grew up. Here's how I was influenced. And just kind of put together a little short letter to your family and friends and just let them know kind of how they impacted you. And that's really the big thing for me. Start with that legacy letter. I'm always here to help people get started. Yeah. I had one guy say, well, how much do you charge? And I said, I don't charge anything. I'm just here to kind of get things going for you. But he goes, no, dude, you got to put a value to your stuff. And he goes, it's $2.99. I said, okay, well, then it's $2.99. So I thought, well, yeah, but I can give a heavy discount too for people I know, love, and trust. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the big thing for me, David, is, again, just take a self-assessment and look and see how blessed you are. One of my favorite poems from another author, and I don't actually know who wrote it or the word for word, but he's talking about drinking from the saucer because his cup overflows. You know, most of us have so many blessings in our lives that we don't really even take a look at them. But I've had so many amazing opportunities just because. Do I feel lucky? You know, do I feel certain privilege? I call it Christ privilege because I feel like I'm on his errand, doing what I need to do, reaching out the hands. If we're the eyes, ears, and the hands of the Lord, you know, we have to be willing to follow promptings and do what's given us. But to me, it's just, you know, get started somewhere. Don't leave this life without, you know, don't make people guess who you loved, what you loved. And, you know, just the portions of life that are so precious, you have to document that in some form or fashion. And, you know, if they want to reach out to me, I'd love to have the opportunity to meet them, friend or stranger. You know, they're never that far removed from becoming a dear friend.
I love that. And the key is that one of the things people say, how can you be retired? When you said, I don't charge, the reality of it is we all can improve our having level because there's so many things that we could do with more money coming in. That's not the issue. And retirement for me wasn't retiring to do nothing. Retirement is doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want. And everybody, including you and everybody that's ever been God's brought into my path over that time, is a client. Because a client isn't determined by whether you're paying me, it's whether I can serve you. And therefore, if I can serve you as a warrior, then I'm going to serve you. If money follows, that's a beautiful thing. I'm not against money. Money you can do, there's a lot, it's a tool, right? It's not the objective. When I say, what's your dream? And they say, make a lot of money. I say, you missed it. You don't understand. Because it's, what are you going to do with that money? That's what the dream is. So, and getting your story out, the thing that you said that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here and have this discussion is there's so many ways, whether it's in a poem, whether it's being a podcast guest, whether it's even just sharing a letter and posting it or getting it out there. There's so many things that you can do to get your story out and share with your community, your network, your family, your friends, all the people that care about you or don't even know you, and get that message out. And poetry is a kind of a cool way. I like the concept. I like the idea. So I know that you are very prevalent on the Be Connected platform, and Arlen Denney is much easier to find than David Roberts on any platform. But how do we stay in touch beyond just reaching out to you? And by the way, if you're on this platform and you're seeing this replay, you definitely want to connect with Arlen. But beyond that, Arlen, there are any other ways that you want us to stay in touch?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, my Gmail is arlendenney@gmail, and that's ARLENDENNEY, arlendenney@gmail. I'm also on LinkedIn. Although I make connections on LinkedIn, I try and get them to move to Be Connected just so that we can be away from the chaos and clutter that's on some of the social business platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Linktree / Arlen Denney as well has a lot of the different businesses that I'm currently in and working with. So they can reach me on Linktree as well.
Well, there's a lot of different ways. We'll put any of those on the show notes that you want us to share, because normally when people are listening to the audio platform, they're not writing this down. They may be driving or working out, so they probably don't have a pen. So they're going to have to come back to it anyway. So I try to put those as much as possible in the show notes. And so those will be there. But Arlen, I'm really thankful that you share. Hopefully this will come across with you in Bahrain and me in Dallas, and the audio will be good to listen to and we'll have a good time. But again, I appreciate you joining. And if not, we'll go back and redo it. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. This has been a pleasure. Again, I've seen you do these podcasts in the past, and I didn't really know if I had anything to contribute until just recently, when I realized, we are aligned in a lot of different ways, like you said, to be able to have the opportunity to encourage people to do their own thing, to be that warrior in their lives, and to know that everybody gets somewhere. You might think somebody lucky, but they've had 40 years of preparation to get on that opportunity train that finally pulled into their station. So everybody, their personal growth comes from their struggles. I don't care who you are. You're not going to be growing when you're comfortable. So get out of that comfort zone, find some struggles, do hard things, because I know you can do them. And just enjoy that part of the journey, because when you look back on it and you go, man, was I an accidental careerist in my life, or was I an accidental liver of my life? Life is what you choose to do, not what life does to you.
Well, I love it, Arlen, and I'm sure we'll have more journey to share along the way. And you absolutely have a story. Really, any warrior listening to this, you may not think you have a story, but frankly, the ones that think their story doesn't matter are really the ones that everybody needs to hear. We all hear the ones who have millions of followers. I mean, I'm not a Joe Rogan, you can hear, but everybody knows, his name, people know, other people's name. There's warriors amongst us, and we all have a story to tell, and we all have a vision, and I appreciate you sharing that with us today. So I guess we're going to have to land the plane, Arlen. So I appreciate you sharing with us. We'll be back next Friday with another episode, another warrior to feature on Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.